If you liked Game of Thrones, you will absolutely love the story of Zhao Ghao. And you'll absolutely gain a very important life lesson after hearing this story. Zhao Ghao was a famous Chinese politician, and he served all three emperors of the Qin dynasty. Now, what's interesting about Zhao Ghao is that he came from a family of criminals and was a criminal himself. And as punishment, his entire family were castrated. So he was a eunuch himself. And despite all this, he managed to rise through power because the first Qin emperor admired his knowledge in criminal law. And as the first emperor nears death, he names his eldest son as heir. However, Zhao Ghao, being a criminal, he involved himself in a conspiracy with the chancellor and other nobles at the Chinese court and changed the edict in order to make the eldest son commit suicide and naming the first emperor's youngest son as emperor. And this was obviously because the youngest son was a lot easier to manipulate, was a lot easier to control, while the elder son did not have the same affection for Zhao Ghao. And as the years passed, Zhao Ghao realizes that he can stage another coup to his advantage. But it was very difficult to tell which people at the court were loyal to him and which were not. So what Zhao Ghao does is that he takes a deer and rides it in front of the emperor. Now the emperor, bemused, asks Zhao Ghao why is he riding a deer, to which Zhao Ghao replies that the emperor is mistaken. He's actually riding a horse. So obviously the emperor does not believe Zhao Ghao and is a little bit confused at the allegation, but Zhao Ghao insists and appeals to the fallacy of the masses and says, look, if you do not believe that I'm riding a horse, go ask the other people at the court and see what they have to say. So the emperor goes around and asks all of the people at the court, and some of them do confirm that Zhao Ghao is riding a horse, while others confirm that no, he's actually riding a deer. To which Zhao Ghao knew which are the people loyal to him. Because you see, it was obvious. The reality was in plain sight. Everyone knew that Zhao Ghao was riding a deer. But the people who said that he is riding a horse were loyal to him. It's this unquestioning loyalty that Zhao Ghao was looking for. When people were willing to outright lie in public despite the bewildering claim. I mean, it doesn't matter what their body senses were telling them. It doesn't matter then the fact that they obviously knew it was a deer. The fact that they were willing to lie is what saved their life. Because Zhao Ghao then managed to actually do his coup, and he did execute the people that said he was riding a deer rather than a horse. And this is a very interesting moral lesson that people who are close to power, people who want to get in high positions of power, do not value truth as a virtue. In fact, truth is hampering you. You need to say, and you need to outright lie in order to remain in power. And I'm thinking about a perfect example. The perfect example is J.K. Rowling. And I give this example a lot of times because it's just so blatant and every person can understand it. J.K. Rowling is a very progressive and influential person. She donated a lot of money to progressive causes. She is on board with almost every single progressive ideology. She is for open borders. She is a pronounced and active feminist. But she just doesn't believe men can have uteruses. Like that is the only thing. Now, she didn't discriminate against a transgender person. There is no evidence that she wouldn't hire one or that she would not want to work with one. None of that matters. It's just like her belief, like what is inside, what are her thoughts on the issue. Her crime is an ideological one, not a crime against another person. A victimless crime, you can say it. But because of that, she was accused of, I don't know how to phrase this, she was accused of like attempting to commit a genocide or something. It was just like a little bit of a hyperbole, that I would say, a little bit of a misrepresentation. But yeah, I mean, it's getting to the point where now even game studios that are selling Harry Potter games, they distance themselves from J.K. Rowling. It's like they view her as Satan incarnate for her crimes, which aren't punished by any court system, aren't punished by any judicial system. They're simply punished, I guess, by the people on Twitter and the people who own businesses. And I think the reason they are punished is because the people who punish it are afraid that if they don't punish it, they are going to be punished themselves by people up the chain. So, for example, if a company, like let's say, doesn't distance themselves from them, then they're going to have activists banging at their doors being furious. Like I think that's why they're doing this. But what's interesting is that J.K. Rowling, okay, like she is 100% convinced that a man cannot have a uterus. Like this is her firm beliefs. And if she wanted to maintain her status, if she wanted to maintain her prestige, all she had to do was to lie. Like all she had to do was to say something that she doesn't agree with, and everything would have been fine. Like she should have, from her perspective, it was a deer, but had she called it a horse, then all of a sudden, none of these issues would have happened. Because again, this has nothing to do with actions. Okay, it's like, do you believe? And this is, I think, the progressive litmus test. This is why people keep bringing it up, because you have to wonder, like, why do conservatives keep bringing this up? I saw Vosh speaking with a conservative, and Vosh was like, why do conservatives keep bringing it up? And I think it's because whenever you go on Twitter and you have a political debate, like, regardless of what it is, it doesn't matter. You can even talk about the politics of knitting, because I understand everything is political nowadays. But eventually you will be asked the question, like, do you believe something like, do you believe transgender women are women? All right, and depending on how you answer to this question, you are going to be put in a box. And it's either like, okay, you can still be a decent person, like just because you answer correctly doesn't mean that you are a good person. What it means is that you are not an undesirable. You are not in the same camp with J.K. Rowling's. And like this really bothered me, because it's like, what does it matter what a person believes? I mean, a person can believe something, but his actions can be different. So, for example, I can believe that taxation is theft, but I still pay my taxes. Like, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day that much how people believe. I mean, sure, there is a little bit of connection between a person's beliefs and their actions, but at the same time, a person can believe something and just not act on it. You know, and the more I think about it, I came to the conclusion that the reason this is the litmus test and is such an important question is that most people that are over the age of 18 right now, they did not learn about gender studies in school. Okay, like most people that grew up from my generation, and I think this is true almost everywhere around the world in different cultures, in different things. Like you learn about the fact that there's two genders. And I'm pretty sure that if you go on the street right now, like if I were to take a camera and go on the street right now and ask random people how many genders are there, the answer would be overwhelming. Okay, like if you put it to actually a census or a poll, I certainly would be shocked. Okay, maybe you'd get like a different result in California now, but here in Eastern Europe, like I am 100% sure that the result would be that overwhelmingly amount of people. Even like very progressive people here would still say that there's two, because that's what they learned. You know, that's how they were educated. That's what they know. That's their truth, as the progressives like to call it. But if a person manages to change their mind, like if his mind is malleable to be open, I suppose, to new interpretations of reality, regardless of what he knows, and it's irrelevant if he believes it or not, but if he's willing to say it, like that's the thing, if he's willing to say it, then is the type of person that can be loyal to a movement or an ideology. Like if he's willing to change his mind on this, then he is the type of person that an ideology that requires 100% compliance can use that person. I mean, no, seriously, like, think about how things are on Twitter right now, all right? In the real world, it's okay to have disagreements. Like, it's okay for certain people to say, like, okay, this problem has very different points of view, and it's okay to disagree. If you go on Twitter, there is very little disagreement. Like, people will treat almost every issue as having a right or wrong answer. Like, there is no in between. It's either you're a good person or you're a bigot. There is no other way around. And by the way, like, this polarization happens with the right as well. It's like either you say this or you're a communist. Like, there is no nuance to the issue anymore. There is no... and this is predominantly on social media. Like, in the real world, things aren't like this. In the real world, people are willing to have nuances. People are willing to accept that certain issues might have, like, different options and their trade-offs, and, you know, it's up to you to interpret which ones you like. But on social media, no, it's like, what do you see? Do you see a deer or a horse? And if you see the wrong thing, well, it just says that you are not loyal. You're basically a person that is an enemy. And this is what this Chinese story taught us. And it's why so many people who work, for example, at DC Comics or even journalism, they're willing to outright lie. Because they want to maintain their job, that's why. A perfect example, okay? I don't know if you guys remember the milkshake scandal, but really quick story, okay? I'm going on a tangent here, but this is a really quick story to see what I mean. Some girl which worked in comic books, forgot her name, but she took a picture of her eating a milkshake. And allegedly, she got harassment, okay? People harassed her for posting this picture. Now, she never presented any evidence, like, she never showed any logs, she never showed any examples of people harassing her. It was literally her word. And then everyone in the industry, like, literally everyone was on her side and basically saying, oh my god, like, how horrible our clients are. You know, how horrible our fans are. Like, oh, this is proof that our fans are misogynists. And no one, like, even remotely stopped and asked, it's like, hey, why are you saying this? Like, what, can we see what was said so we can at least hold the person accountable or anything like that? No, everyone just went along, because if they didn't, they would show that they do not have loyalty to the ideology. And for her, for the woman, I understand why she did it now, because it was a loyalty test. It was literally to see who are the good people, which would agree with her, versus who are the bad people that would question her. Like, it's so blatantly obvious after reading this Chinese tale. And this is why conversations cannot happen anymore, especially on social media. It's because most people probably know at a deep level about reality, but they're not willing to express it, because if they do express it, there are negative consequences coming their way. So they're really afraid. You know, I grew up in a socialist country, you guys know, and we call these things open secrets. It was like a secret that everyone knew. For example, the wife of the dictator was supposed to be a renowned world chemist. And like, she was presented as the smartest woman in the world. Now, everyone knew that this is ridiculous, okay? And it was, because after we overthrew the regime, we heard stories from the people around her. Apparently, like, she didn't even know the chemical formula of water. Like, she just loved the fact that she could trick people, like, she could force people to acknowledge that she is a world-renowned chemist, even though she couldn't even finish high school. And everyone agreed. Like, you would go on the street and everyone was like, oh, wow, this invention, yeah, it's because of Ileana Ceausescu. Like, she is the greatest. And people just said this because if they didn't, they were afraid of getting punished, just like the people who said that it was a horse rather than a deer. Because they were afraid of Zhao Ghao. That's why they did it. Okay, fear and terror manages people to say whatever you want. You want people to say 2 + 2 = 5, they will say it, if you scare them enough. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section. Oh, and by the way, if you like this video, please share it around, because the algorithm does it. So, you know, even clicking a like helps, if not, just sharing it around. Usually videos where I go on a tangent, they don't get many views, so I'm pretty sure, like, people would appreciate them, but they just don't click on them, because, like, Chinese, deer, horse, squeaky Romanian, who cares? But I think, like, it has, like, a deeper understanding, like, a deeper meaning to it that people could benefit from hearing it. So, yeah, see you guys later.